Right, so a few months back, I was walking up the stairs in our house. Not running, not carrying anything particularly heavy, just walking, normally, up the stairs. And I had to stop at the top and sort of gather myself. Just for a second. Just stood there on the landing, hand on the wall, pretending I was looking at something interesting on the ceiling. I was not looking at anything interesting on the ceiling. I was recovering from the stairs. And the worst part was, I almost did not notice, because it had been happening so gradually that it had started to feel like just how stairs are now. You know, stairs are hard. That is just a thing. That is just being a man in his mid-40s. Stairs. Except it is not, is it? Or at least, it does not have to be. The knees that ache after sitting too long. The back that complains every morning. The tiredness that never quite lifts, no matter how much coffee you drink. The slightly embarrassing moment when you try to get up off the floor after sitting with the kids and you make a noise you genuinely did not plan to make. The way a long walk now requires a brief recovery period, which is technically called sitting down. Most men I know have got at least 3 of those things going on right now. And most of them have done what I did, which is just quietly accepted it as the furniture of getting older. Just part of the deal. Body gets worse, you adapt, you carry on. But here is the thing that actually worries me. Not the symptoms themselves. The symptoms are just symptoms. What worries me is how slowly it all happens. Because slow means you can barely see it. And barely seeing it means most men are not in decline. They are just normalizing the decline. One small surrender at a time. And they will not notice until the bill arrives all at once. And by then, the refund window has quietly closed. That is what this video is about. Not illness, not a lecture, not a list of things to feel bad about. Just 10 signs that your health might be heading in a direction you did not consciously choose. Things worth noticing before they become the whole story. I am John. I have 2 boys. Not a doctor, not a fitness person. Genuinely not qualified to give anyone health advice in any professional sense. But I have got a body that has been giving me feedback for a while now, and I have started paying attention to it, which is more than I can say for most of my 30s. And I want my boys to understand this stuff earlier than I did, because it turns out the body does not wait for you to be ready. Sign 1. You are always tired. Not dramatically exhausted, not ill-tired, just flat. Like the battery never quite charges fully anymore. You sleep, you wake up, and there is still this low-level fog that sits behind your eyes all day. You get through the day on coffee and stubbornness and collapse on the sofa by 8:30. And you think that is just adulthood now. Sometimes it is, but often it is a signal. Poor sleep quality is part of it. Dehydration is part of it. And a lot of men are quite significantly dehydrated and have simply stopped noticing because they have been that way for years. Processed food is part of it too. The stuff that is convenient and fast and requires no thought, but also gives the body very little to actually work with. The other bit is movement, or the lack of it. Which sounds backwards. Moving when you are tired feels like spending money you do not have. But a body that does not move regularly starts to produce less energy. It is essentially just following the instructions you keep giving it, which are, we do not need that much capacity, thank you. We mostly sit at a desk and watch television. The body follows the brief you give it. Sign 2. The stairs. We have already met the stairs, but also the slight shortness of breath walking to the car, the mild puffing when you chase the kids in the garden, the feeling when you do something physical that your body is a bit surprised and offended by the request. Cardiovascular fitness declines faster than almost anything else when it goes unused. It drops quietly, without announcement, and then one day you notice the stairs, or you jog about 30 meters for the bus, and your lungs have a word with you about expectations. Sign 3. Everything hurts more than it should. The knees, the hips, the lower back that is basically just a general area of complaint now. The neck and shoulders that carry a permanent tension you have stopped noticing because it has been there so long it feels structural. Here is the thing about this one that genuinely surprised me. I used to assume that if my body hurt, the answer was rest. Stop doing the thing that hurts, protect it, be careful, which makes sense. Except for a lot of common aches and pains, especially in the joints and back, the evidence points pretty firmly in the other direction. Movement is often what the body actually needs. Gentle, consistent, not dramatic, but moving rather than protecting. Muscle is what holds everything together, and without it, things start to ache. Sign 4. You have stopped moving naturally. And this one is interesting because it is so easy to miss. When did you last sit on the floor? Actually sit on the floor, cross-legged or otherwise, and then get back up without using furniture to haul yourself upright. When did you last walk somewhere that did not need to be walked to? Not for exercise, just walked, because the day involved walking. There is a certain point where men stop doing physical things without noticing. They stop taking the stairs because there is a lift. They drive somewhere they could walk in 8 minutes. They stand at the edge of things at the park while the kids run around. They avoid the floor because getting up has become an event. I watched myself do this gradually, getting more and more careful with my own body, which sounds sensible, but is actually just a very slow way of teaching it to do less and less. Sign 5. Recovery takes much longer than it used to. You do something physical, anything vaguely challenging, and it stays with you for days. Your muscles complain. Your sleep gets worse after exercise rather than better. You feel more fatigued after rest than you did before it. Poor recovery is often the body waving a flag about a few things at once. Sleep quality, nutrition, hydration, stress levels that have been sitting quietly in the background for months and are now apparently being expressed through your calves being unreasonably tight for 4 days after a walk. Sign 6. Gradual weight gain. And I want to be careful here because this is not about appearance or any of that. I am not interested in shaming anyone for how they look, including my past self, who was also quite fond of cheese and convenience. But slow weight gain over years often reflects something specific. Not a dramatic shift, just lifestyle creeping gradually in one direction. The portions getting slightly bigger, the movement getting slightly less, the alcohol at the weekend becoming a habit across more of the week, the convenience food filling in the spaces where proper meals used to be. The slow part is what makes it dangerous in terms of health, not appearance, because slow means the body adapts. And the body adapting means you stop noticing what has changed. And suddenly you are 5 years in and wondering when things shifted, which they did, just too quietly to catch. Sign 7. Your mood is worse. You are quicker to irritability, lower threshold for frustration, less motivation to do anything that is not essential. A kind of low-grade flat feeling that is not depression exactly, but is not quite right either. I spent years treating my irritability as a personality trait, just the way I was. Tired, a bit stressed, a bit snappy, entirely reasonable given everything on. And there is something in that. Stress is real. Life is genuinely demanding. But physical health and mood are connected in a way I did not take seriously enough for a long time. Poor sleep, lack of movement, too much processed food, too much alcohol. These things affect mood in a direct physiological way, not just a treat yourself better way. The brain runs on the same body the rest of you does. You cannot neglect the body and expect the mind to be fine. Sign 8. Your sleep is poor, which is connected to half the other things on this list, because sleep is when the body does most of its actual repair work, and a lot of men are operating on significantly less quality sleep than they realise, because they have been doing it long enough to call it normal. Staying up too late is a massive part of it. There is a kind of exhausted defiance that happens at the end of the day where the children are finally asleep, the house is quiet, and the last thing you want to do is be sensible about bedtime. That is completely understandable. I do it regularly, and I know exactly what I am doing while I am doing it. But the screens, the alcohol, the late eating, all of it chips away at sleep quality in ways that are well established and genuinely significant. And poor sleep makes everything else on this list worse. Tiredness, mood, recovery, weight, motivation, it all connects back here eventually. Sign 9. You have started avoiding mirrors or photographs. This one is quieter and more uncomfortable than the others. It is the habit of not quite looking, scrolling past yourself in family photos, standing at a certain angle, not catching your own eye in the bathroom mirror. A kind of low-level avoidance of a reflection you have stopped being comfortable with. I am not talking about vanity. I am talking about the slightly sad thing that happens when a man slowly disconnects from his own body, because engaging with it honestly has started to feel too uncomfortable. That disconnect is worth paying attention to, not because of how you look, but because of what it means about how you feel. A man who is moving well, sleeping reasonably, eating food that is more than beige, and not running entirely on stress and willpower generally does not avoid his own face in the morning. The avoidance is the signal, not the reflection. Sign 10. You have accepted feeling bad as normal. This is the big one. This is the one I most want my boys to understand, even if they will not need to understand it for another 20 years. Most men are not healthy. They have just become used to feeling unhealthy. The tiredness, the aches, the low motivation, the foggy brain, the laboured breathing, the stiffness in the morning. None of that is normal in the sense of being inevitable or acceptable. But it becomes normal in the sense of being familiar, expected, unremarkable. And once it becomes unremarkable, men stop mentioning it, stop thinking of it as something to address, start organising their life quietly around it. Not walking too far, not sitting on the floor, not volunteering for physical things, booking the lift, taking the easy route. Not because they are lazy, but because the body has quietly indicated that easy is what it can manage now. That slow narrowing of what a man does with his body is one of the saddest things I can think of, if I am honest. Not dramatic, not a crisis, just a man who used to do things, gradually doing slightly fewer of them, until the version of himself at 60 has a much smaller life than the version at 35 ever imagined. Now, the good news. You did not think I was going to leave you with that, did you? Because here is the other thing that is true. The body is far more responsive than most men give it credit for. It is waiting to be used. And even a fairly small shift in the direction of movement, sleep, and food starts to produce results quite quickly, because the body has been quietly hoping you would come back to it. Walking is genuinely one of the most underrated things available to any man at any age. Not dramatic, not expensive, not requiring any equipment or subscription or knowledge. Just 20 to 30 minutes a day of actually moving through the world at a pace that makes your breathing work slightly harder. The research on walking is frankly embarrassingly good for something so boring. Cardiovascular health, mood, cognitive function, sleep quality, joint health, weight. It quietly improves all of it given enough time. Sleep is next. Not perfect sleep, just better sleep, more consistently. Earlier nights more often. Screens out of the bedroom or at least dimmed down. Less alcohol midweek, because alcohol absolutely destroys sleep quality, even when it feels like it is helping you get off. Food. Not a diet, not a plan, not anything that requires a calculator. Just more protein, which keeps you fuller and supports muscle. More actual food and slightly less manufactured food. Not elimination, just proportion. The body mostly knows what to do when you give it what it needs. And movement beyond just walking. Something that asks the muscles to work. Not a gym if you hate the gym, but something. Floor work, carrying things, playing with the kids in a way that involves actually getting on the ground. Anything that asks the body to be capable, regularly, and stops the slow drift toward doing less and less. You do not need to be obsessed. You need to stop neglecting. That is the whole thing. You do not need to become someone who talks about protein powder or tracks their macros or owns specialist footwear. You just need to not abandon the body entirely and then wonder why it is struggling to cooperate. I think about my boys a lot when I think about this stuff. Not in a grand philosophical way. Just in the ordinary, quiet way you think about the people you would very much like to still be useful for in 20 years. Still able to kick a ball. Still able to go somewhere with them that involves walking. Still able to get down on the floor when there are grandchildren and get back up again without it becoming an incident. That is not a big ask. That is a genuinely achievable thing for most men with habits that are well within reach and not particularly dramatic. But it does require not waiting, because the men who are doing that at 65 are, almost without exception, the men who started something quietly in their 40s and just kept going. Nothing impressive, nothing Instagram worthy, just consistent, boring, unglamorous effort in the direction of staying capable. The other version, the one I am trying to avoid and trying to help my boys avoid, is the man who kept putting it off, who had every intention of sorting it out, just not right now, not this week. Wait until things calm down a bit, which they never quite did, and then one day found himself at 58, sitting on the edge of the bed in the morning, genuinely struggling to put his socks on, quietly furious that nobody told him sooner. Somebody is trying to tell you now. Your body gives you warning signs long before it gives up on you. The tiredness, the aches, the breathlessness on the stairs, the mood, the sleep, the quiet avoidance of things that used to feel ordinary. They are not just the noise of getting older, they are information. The question is whether you choose to listen while there is still plenty of time to do something about it. There usually is.